Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar for today. We're going to discuss some new products. My name is Cameron Kilton, the Director of Engineering Services here at Baicells. For those of you who just joined, I have muted everybody's mic. If you do have questions, we will have a formal Q&A towards the end of the webinar. I do ask that you stick your questions in the chat window, and I will address those towards the end or as I see fit throughout the product discussion. As far as hands-on, the only one I do have with me, and I'll flip over to live video, and we'll kind of review the Nova 227 and talk a little bit more about that one and the kind of a hands-on approach, and probably take some live Q&A in that regard. And the Nova 436, I do not yet have my hands physically on it, and I'm sure we have a follow-up webinar to get everybody to kind of look and feel. Many of you have already got a chance to see it or witness it at Wispalooza, and you can obviously tell we're pretty excited about it from a product perspective. With that said, we'll kind of get jumping right in here, and I'll get started. Okay, so for those who are not familiar, we've developed a low-power base station. It is what we call the Nova 227, which is really an aggregated power. So we are starting with a new naming convention. We are keeping the Nova line for this series of products. And what 227 means, it's essentially it's a two-port radio, and aggregated power is 27 dBm. Each port transmits at 24, but the aggregate combined in MIMO is 27. Hence the name Nova 227. You will see this has a very similar shell to our new gen product line. The new gen 19.5 dBi CPE is in the same exact shell as the Nova 227. You're going to see this shell on a pretty regular basis when it comes to product lines that we're going to be introducing. It's certainly got some very good design, including the side door, which has been a lot of people have been very excited about. The side door is something we're pushing for more often, getting rid of a lot of those rather cumbersome fittings that people are familiar with in the current Nova R9. It is PoE Plus standard, so it works with your Nettonics today, tough switches for those of you still using them, edge points, and other PoE 802.3 AT PoE switches. Primary place we kind of see for this is multiple locations. It's a true pico cell, and the sense of a pico cell is really to fill in some of these pockets that you are having a hard time, and looking at it from. One second. If you're having a hard time filling some pockets, we want to talk about. Sorry about that. Some windows keep popping up. Talk about micropops. A lot of people are using various technologies for micropops, and this is really to kind of take in consideration to how do you fill those gaps from a micropop perspective while still maintaining LTE. So we know a lot of people are using different technologies now, whether it be a Mimosa, Ubiquiti, Microtech, wireless solutions, or Cambium, etc., to fill some of these micro pop voids. And we wanted to develop a product to take that away per se. And the reason we did that, it's much easier from an installation perspective to keep one part number on the shelf, regardless if it's a micro pop, a full-blown tower. It's when LTE, at least, it doesn't care. As long as you got a SIM card in it, it's going to connect to whatever base station it sees fit. And that may be the micropop, it may be the macro right on the tower. So we have the opportunity to really leverage the standard space LTE while still maintaining a much simpler inventory control for your installation technicians. And as long as they get a signal, they can get going. So here's the form factor. I'll go live here in a little bit with some actual video, and we will show that in a little bit more hands-on. But I want to show the digital imagery kind of up close. You're not going to see it really good on my screen. It has a very limited set of LEDs on it. You got power, run, active, and alarm. And that's it. It's really clean. As long as all those, other than the alarm light, are essentially on and green, you should be all set. The only time you'll see an alarm is essentially if you're not getting a connection to the cloud and to our cloud OMC and whatnot. Everything else should be green all the time. Yeah, much like I spoke about earlier, it's RJ45. We recommend Cat 6, but Cat 5e works plenty fine for gigabit connection. This is a gigabit 802.3 AT PoE plus connection. And getting kind of into specifics, this one is CBRS ready. So it works currently in band 42, 43, and 48 once officially ratified. So for those of you who have the Nova R9 today, it's essentially the same exact radio, same exact software, exception it's just a lower power unit with integrated antennas. So you can see it's 10 or 20 megahertz channel support. We will be supporting the 5 and 15 megahertz channel support in future software releases. Those are coming quite soon. So look for that to be even more exciting. Built-in GPS antenna, that's right on the top of the unit, and I'll show that here in a couple of upcoming slides. 2x2, so it's just like the Nova R9 that you're familiar with today, just a little bit smaller. Built-in 13.5 dBi antenna, plus minus 5. So we are seeing it's a kind of a conservative antenna gain measurement. However, in the lab, we're seeing closer to 14 and a half, but some of them have come in around 13.5 depending on where you are in the band, so we went with that number. 65 degrees horizontal beam width, so it's a pretty good size beam in the sense of trying to focus that connection in a certain area, all without going too big. We didn't want to do something like a 90 or a 120. We wanted to keep it around relatively small, so 65 seemed to be a good target, so we went with that. 20 degrees vertical. So this is really good for the applications in multiple places, particularly those that you may have a small kind of a bedroom community and you need to have varying elevations. This can help cover quite a bit of area, particularly if you're going in a valley going up a hill. You need to have some up tilt. Essentially, without having the up tilt, we have enough vertical beam width to account for whatever's near far and whatever's far out. Power consumption, extremely low. Much you'd expect of other PoE devices, it's less than 20 watts. I'm seeing in load tests, we're seeing closer to 15 to 16 watts. And if it's really cold temperature, it's closer to 17, 18 watts. Much like I led on to earlier, this is the same exact software that's running on our Nova R9, and 96 concurrent users this is capable of supporting. So once the B110 software, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the Q&A section, is fully GA and baked, you'll have 96 users that are capable of connecting to even this base station. So same exact limitations of the Nova R9. Supports all the other features as well, including voice over LTE, as you see here. SON, which is coming in a very soon software update, including automatic neighbor recognition, which is really, really important for those of us who have been asking for X2 handoff to be exact. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the biggest one I think is important for those who are still trying to grasp what a PCI is and what impact that can have on your network is we'll do PCI conflict detection, and part of that will be auto PCI selection. Yeah, this kind of speaks for itself. I won't really get into the specifics, but it's a pretty wide temperature varying system here. All right, so before we get into that, I'm actually going to grab a unit here. We'll go live. We'll ask some, I would like to see some questions. If you have any, put it in the chat window. It'll be a good time to do so, and we'll go from there. All right, let's see if I can get this stuff. Okay. Hope everybody can see me all right. I'm going to pull up my chat window here. So if you guys have any questions, please ask them. So this is the Nova 227. I'll hold it up next to my face for kind of some size, or even better so, what seems to fuel me, can of Red Bull. So about the size of a can of Red Bull in height and width for that matter. Side door over here, very clean. Once you kind of zoom in there, not much to it, just a grounded Ethernet plug, and you'll see kind of move that out of the way. But that's the weather grommet that goes in there. Close the door on the cable, cinch down with 2 screws, and last but not least, the grounding lug. So a couple people have asked, as the grounding lug minimum 14 gauge, 14 auger wire. I recommend something heavier than that, but that is the minimum to meet the warranty requirements. Mounting bracket. Oh, good question. I will. Oh, Josh, I figured you would ask. You always have a good mounting question. I will bring up the mounting bracket here in just one quick second, but it's pretty light. It's actually the same exact mounting bracket that's on the 19.5 CPI today, CPE that you have today, fitted for this particular thing. So all the mounting bracket that you see on the 19.5 is identical. Price point for the unit. You'd think that I would have some information on that, but I'm kind of the tech guy. But what I understand right now is the MSRP on the unit is $17.99. I'm sure one of the sales team are on here, and they'll probably add to the chat box. Right now, I think there's a special for the end of the year. I think it's $9.99 to you, to the consumer. I think that's the special. However, I'm hoping somebody on here from the sales team is going to throw something in the chat box to confirm my idea there. Otherwise, like I said, I'm going to pop it up here one more time. It's I actually love it. I actually have this particular unit. Has been in operation and test in my. Oh, thank you, Katie. $9.99 to the end of the year. This one has been in testing in my laundry room, shooting out my wall. I've been testing with a 19.5 CPE about a half a mile out. Connecting at -98 RSRP, and I was pulling about 75 meg down and 6 megs up. That was about the peak I was getting at that, and that was through a heck of a lot of trees up here in Maine. So good coverage. I mean, don't expect it to work miracle. It's not going to go 10 miles through a set of pine trees. And Lorenzo, when will you get to Rev 11 and 12? Well, you'll see that in the next slide here shortly. How many connections per? I assume that, Bill, you mean how many connections per this Nova 227, is that correct? Throw a yes up there for me if you could. All right, great. 96, that is what it's capable of. Same as the Nova R9 that exists today. And I'll talk a little bit more about the software that's upcoming here towards the end. I know there's been a lot of angst in regard to that, but there will be some exciting news for all 72 of you current participants to hang out to the end for. All right, I'm going to switch back over to my slide, guys, unless you have any more questions on the 227. I'm not seeing any. I'll do that now. Okay, so this is, I said this is, I'm going to talk about it. The Nova 436. So this is a 4x1 watt radio, dual carrier base station or dual component carrier, known as CCA. Some people call it CA for short, but essentially it's the same thing. So what this product does, and I'll kind of flip through a few slides here. Oop. Back to the cool looking one. This is, to answer Lorenzo's question, this is LTE Release 12, CA product, and we're able to carrier aggregate 2 different channels, both either contiguous or discontiguous channels, or non-contiguous is the word I prefer to use. So what that really means is you could, in the old CA days, which for those who have never deployed CA, there really isn't an old CA day, but for the likes of the systems that I used to deploy, CA was a pretty common system in big, expensive macros. I'm talking $100,000 kind of macro sites. Now, with that, you had to actually have aggregated channels or contiguous channel spectrum. So you couldn't go 3660 and like 3560 as two different channels to aggregate. You'd have to use 3660, then 3680. It'd have to be abutting channels with literally no guard band or anything like that. And they perform actually pretty well. I'm not going to say they don't. However, with up and coming CBRS and the way the PALs may work out is you don't know what channel you're going to get. You don't know if one could be operating in a PAL zone or one could be operating in a GA zone. So by designing a product that will take discontiguous channels and aggregate them together gives us the most flexibility. So we can say you want to operate a 10 megahertz channel that in the PAL that you've got assigned, and you want to operate a 20 megahertz channel that is in GA, you can do that. Yes, definitely, Josh, on the side COM ports. That's a big deal for me. We try to keep that clean. What I can tell you about this, and we'll get some more pictures here, but more importantly is this is capable with carrier aggregation of up to 224 megabits per CA. So that's the total product capacity, or 112 megabits per channel. And what you have the ability to do, this is backwards compatible with current generation products. So the Cat 4 products that we are shipping today, they will not take advantage of carrier aggregation. However, they can work on one of the two carriers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So though I don't have a presentation on the product yet, I will be soon. And you can expect an upcoming webinar, which I'm going to try to do more of here, to talk about the products and have general Q&As, because I think it would be helpful for everyone. Is you're going to see a Cat 6 UE come out not long after you see this product hit the streets, if not about the same time. And that will be able to aggregate both the channels together and get the maximum throughput of 224 meg down and about 20 megs up in frame configuration 2. In frame configuration 1, you're going to see closer to 160 megs down, as much as 40 megabits up. So it's a significant increase in overall throughput and capacity on the cell. You also can operate this in split sector. Now, unlike some of our competition, you don't have the ability to take a 20 megahertz channel and operate it in split mode as two 20 megahertz channels. You can operate it as two 10 megahertz channels. Well, because of the way we've designed this radio, we actually can take we can go into split mode while using two independent 20 megahertz channels while still putting out the same amount of power. So that makes us very unique by comparison to some of our competitions by being able to do that. So that's something that's going to be very useful for those of you who have been doing 4-sector site designs using the Nova R9 that exists today, for some coverage and capacity for these new markets. You actually could buy two of these, operate it in split mode, and get 4-sector coverage still at a lesser price. You wouldn't have to go out and buy 4 of Nova R9s when you could buy just 2 of these, because the price is cheaper buying 2 of these versus 4 Nova R9s. Also, this particular product, which we'll get to here on the side door and more so in the technical pictures, does have an SFP cage on it. So, are the units out already? They are, I'll let Katie comment because I see her in here. I'm pretty sure we're taking pre-orders from distribution on them, which means you really need to talk to your distributor to push out the, obviously them getting the equipment. So I'm not in the sales force, so I'm going to say that probably a few times, but I'll let Katie and Rick, I think they're both on here, comment now on the availability, but so watch the chat box. Dual Ethernet interface, which allows redundancy in the backhaul. So fiber loop, I think that, I'm actually going to pull that out of the presentation. It's not really a fiber loop. What will happen is you actually could fiber feed one of these, and you could use the Ethernet, which is a copper interface, and you could link it to another base station via copper and use this as a switch. That's coming in a software release, so the two ports that do exist in this can be switched. So you could, in a sense, kind of do a fiber ring if you did fiber up and you wanted to link the two together via copper, and you could have fiber down on another, and you'd be able to turn on and off that switch. Of course, it'd be in a manual sense for now until we enable some other things like LACP and whatnot. certain SFP cards do I recommend? So that's a great question. My goal is to essentially make it as very easy as possible. We do actually ship this product with 2 single mode SFPs. So like anything that Baicells does, we try to do everything in the kit. So we provide everything such power cable, coax the antenna, or the antenna. So we provide GPS, we provide the SFP cards. Should you choose to use them, you can use your own if you'd like. And you will be, we don't provide the fiber patch cables. That would be on you. But we do provide all the actual hardware that you would need otherwise. Yes, the webinar is recorded and will be available to view later. Okay, so here's some of the drawings, guys, of what you're looking at. We didn't make this much bigger. If you've seen the new Gen 2 Nova R9, which we're calling the Nova 233, it's not much different in size. It's a little bit deeper and a little bit more weight to it, but we are working on trying to keep the power consumption low. So low, in fact, that now that this is running with dual carrier and even all the additional features that are required of it, it still only draws a maximum of 60 watts. So it's still very power efficient compared to our competition, which is something I actually take quite seriously. Because if you have 4 or 5 or even 6 of these on a site, next thing you know, your utility bills are going to go up through the roof. So keeping the cost of the power consumption down is thinking the bigger picture, even what your operational expenses are going to be. So our competition in this space usually is well over 100 watts. And that's something to take into consideration when selecting product, is how much is this going to work your battery plants. I'm a big fan of neg 48 volt rectifier systems, and obviously you get a little bit more runtime the more efficient you can get. And if you're anything like my area, well, where it's very rural, power can be a problem, and as most ISPs, we're familiar that power isn't always stable, so the more runtime the better. So I will point out to you, looking down here and the specifications and the hardware, all the same stuff. We're going to be supporting the similar software that you see today and all the products that you've been deploying. It's going to have the same look and feel, except you'll have the option for additional carriers. That part will obviously look a little bit different. You'll have all the same configuration you've come to know. So the quick settings for setup, PCI, all that will still remain the same. I have seen questions, and I want to have a clarifying answer while I have a number of you on the call. Is if you see where it says receiving sensitivity, so that's measured in RSSI, so that's not measured in dBm. In RSRP. So there is a kind of a misunderstanding that if you have a negative 105 RSRP, that I will never connect. Well, in LTE, if you're running a 20 megahertz channel, for example, your receiving sensitivity for RSSI is negative 100, but that means it's about negative 129.8 RSRP. So if you have a negative 115 RSRP, this will still connect. Negative 120, it would still connect. Once you get around the negative 129, 130, it may not attach. So that's something to be aware of. So that is the difference between receiving sensitivity, RSSI versus RSRP. Okay, so another question that's come up, I'll skip kind of past. We've already said this is a release 12. The throughputs are very similar to what you're familiar with our other products. It's a maximum aggregated of 224 megabits total. And like I mentioned earlier regarding the Cat 4 versus the Cat 6, what we're going to be able to do is if you have, say you have a cell site that's hitting capacity with your current generation hardware, it's all Cat 4. You have 60, 70 people on a base station. You're going to push in the limits, and you just need more channel bandwidth. Well, what will happen in carrier aggregation, which is what's really neat about it, is once you deploy carrier aggregation in a cell, even if it's covering the same area, and even if it's using Cat 4 devices, what will happen is those users will have a set of triggers based on throughput or user subscriber count where it'll balance those 70 users, not necessarily equally, it could be traffic based, across those carriers. So let's say, for example, we're just everybody's even for traffic consumption, even though we know in reality that's not true. It would take 35 of those subscribers and put them on one 20 megahertz channel. It would take the other 35 and put them on the other 20 megahertz channel. And it would balance accordingly based on throughput assumptions to make sure you're getting the overall capacity is still going to be a big increase, whether they're a Cat 6 UE or a Cat 4 UE or any category in between. It's going to do the best thing that that particular base station can do to make sure your aggregate goes up. Base station capacity is 96 users, per sector, it says here, but I want to refer to it as more like per carrier. But per sector is a good wording, but I'll explain the technically behind it. So you can put in split mode, you can run 96 users per carrier or sector, which is a 2-port system. When you aggregate into one antenna and you run CA, it's still 96 users. A lot of people thought, hey, can I put 192 users on this thing? No, you can't. So there's still the limitations in the scheduler, particularly when you use CA. So 96 is still going to be the maximum capacity if you are running it in CA. However, the base station is capable of 192 if you're running in split mode. So you'd have 96 on one and 96 on another. But as soon as you want to aggregate, it's 96 total. So I hope that clears up any questions there. QoS control, this actually does exist on all of our product lines, and I didn't talk about this in the 227 or the Nova R9, but we do QoS, and we do QoS identifiers, which are also known as QCIs, between 1 and 9. So that allows you to do such things such as voice over LTE, which is really a fancy way of saying SIP, and prioritizing that traffic end to end. For those operating a local EPC, and that's the $1 million question, we'll talk a little bit more in the Q&A section, is in order to get end-to-end QoS, you need to have EPC available on either on the base station embedded or have actually local appliance on your network. Yes, we have 2.5 gigahertz equipment, and this particular product line is carrier aggregation for 2.5 is coming early next year, something I'm pushing for. And Lorenzo, I'm happy to answer any questions about 2.5. That's kind of my wheelhouse, 2.5 being my specialty particularly. And for those who have had an opportunity to talk with me individually or work with me at various conferences, knows that I've actually built a 2.5 LTE fixed wireless operator as well as mobile. So I've done a lot with 2.5. So that's actually quite passionate for me. Much like the last product, this is pretty generic stuff. I won't read it to you. All right, so now we'll move into the formal Q&A, and I'll make some general statements. So before we get to a whole lot of questions, however, feel free to keep populating them in the chat window. What I wanted to talk about is some upcoming software. So B110, which was the 96 user software, is going to be going GA, and that's going to be going GA. It could be as early as next week. However, I'm kind of having, and you guys can hold me to it or yell at me later if you like, but if I do not have it available for public release by our Monday, I am not going to release it until the following week. And the reason that is many of you can probably guess, it is a short week. Many of you are going to be taking some time off for the holidays, including Baicells support staff. With that said, I know some of you are going to or probably will upgrade on Thanksgiving Eve or Thanksgiving itself just because you're rebels like that. So I don't want to risk any support nightmares leading into that particular holiday break. So we will, we'll release it if I do have all of the details for Monday. And if we don't have all those details for Monday, I'm going to kind of pass on the buck and wait a whole week and give it to you the next week. Just from our support perspective, I want to make sure that our team is here for you guys to address any problems that you may have, if any, just to be on the safe side. I'm going to kind of err on the side of caution there. All right, so Lorenzo is asking, so will this work with I'm going to say release 12. The base station go past release 10. Which base station will go past release 10? Are you talking about the Nova 227? That'd be a clarifying question for me. Okay, no, that is a release 10 maximum product as far as the hardware capabilities, so we'll not go beyond that. Does the general release have any differences in the current beta version? Yes. So for those that are in the beta group, we do have some software B110 SPC002 and 003 for those that are operating a local. So what does become GA officially is 96 user support across regardless of the platform, whether you're using LGW or a local EPC, and that is going to be released as B110 SPC009. We've also fixed the interface regarding it's going to display the Ethernet connection rate. Some people have had some problems troubleshooting throughput, and basically it's a very simple add-on for us and kind of overlooked, where we didn't show if you're connected at gig or 100 meg or any of those. So that's going to exist in the future software release, hopefully next week. We also are going to start showing all the CPE's MAC addresses if you are operating in LGW bridge mode. However, I want to be clear that a lot of the features that you've come to enjoy and love with LGW, like showing the MZs connected, showing the MAC addresses connected, and IPs that are currently assigned, for those that have been preaching and asking for a local, when that happens, the base station really becomes dumb in the sense it just passes through a UE ID. So you have no visibility to what MZs are attached to your base station without pulling logs. But most of that stuff is captured through the EPC itself by cell ID. So you'd be able to sort by cell ID. So there's another way of getting to it. It's just slightly different. I'll say Paul's asking the question, what's the time frame for the Band 41 gear? I could say you can confidently expect Q1. I'm hoping early in Q1, but I'm going to say that just to cover my tail. We do have some new CPE for varying categories that will be available very early Q1. I do know that for certain. And you'll probably see those hit the market rather quickly before we even have our full CA product online to be able to support. We have a number of customers that love our new CPE designs for Band 41, and once that product's finally baked and ready to go, even though they may not be operating on our base station hardware, they do like the CPE. Other feature that will come is the blur. So a lot of people have asked, what is blur? So essentially it's bit error rate for the link. And what we tell people, for those who are open up and troubleshooting spectrum related issues, yes, I'm aware that you all want a spectrum analyzer, and quite frankly, I'm surprised it's not there yet. That's coming not in this release, but one shortly thereafter is the software spec A. And but what this does do is it does show blur. And what blur is really anything above 10% shows you're probably getting an interference issue, whether it be from somebody else or just yourself. And not only are we going to show it for the entire base station, we actually show the blur per subscriber attached. And we record all that information. So you'll be able to tell if one subscriber that may be in a neighborhood with high noise versus another customer that may not be. And there's some bug fixes in there. Like some people that operate the 10-watt base station, the B110 software was not suitable for you. It would not work. We had some problems where it would turn off the RF. Obviously, you don't want that. So that's been resolved on the 10-watt base station. We've changed some frequency range errors where if you selected a certain band, it wouldn't go all the way to that band size. We fixed some other issues in regards to power range, particularly out of the new 227. That software fixes some issues there. And we also addressed essentially some problems where the base station on uptime, and this is not seen for everybody, but if the base station's online, throughput would start to decrease. And that was kind of a bug that popped up with some equipment, but we did see it, so we wanted to address that. So say your base station capacity was 112 megabit. Next thing you know, the thing's been up for 35 days. The base station capacity could have drifted down to 60 megabit. Obviously, that's a concern, so we wanted to address that. So that's something that we address in this software release as well. And that's really it to talk about from the B110. I know it doesn't sound like a whole lot of features, but adding that 96 user support as a GA was a lot more work than we thought it was going to be. So that was a lot more of the stability problems, particularly for those going above 60 users. We started seeing some stability, so we had to really vet that out and test it. One thing I do encourage, even though this does officially support 96 users going forward, if you were selling 15, or 10, 15, 20 megabit plans and, say 2 megabit uplink, if you're really trying to get 60 people on this, we're all going to be disappointed. It's not going to do it. And the reason I say that is you get everybody on there, peak usage times, it's going to eat that base just really, really quick as far as its resources, and you'll be hitting capacity rather quick. So plan accordingly. What I tell people, depending on your package plans, plan anywhere from 40 to 55, depending on what you're doing for speeds. If you're leaning more towards like the 20 meg plan and 2 megs up, I would say closer to the 40 mark. If you're looking at 15 by 2, you're flirting around probably the 45, 50 mark. And if you're 10 by 2, for example, I'd say you could probably get 60, maybe 60. I'd say 55 to 60 I'll put in there. But you're starting to push it either way right around that point. So like anything, watch your throughput, watch your capacity. If you're installing weak customers, it's going to affect your base station overall capacity. And I can certainly help you guys troubleshoot that if you need to. By all means, just open a support ticket, and we'll be bluntly honest and say, hey, you got some garbage installs. Fix those installs that may bring your capacity up 15, 20%, and all will be well with the world. So, do let us know if you're having some performance problems like that. We'll do our best to help you out. Yes, Bill, the 10 watt is available in Canada. We have a number of operators today deploying that, and I don't know if one of them are on here, but yes, 10 watt base station for 365 is available. Okay, anybody have any, I see some good questions that have come in. I think I've answered most of them. I would like to see some more. You guys got me here for at least 22 more minutes, and it's hard to nail me down. So let's, yes, this presentation will be available to download. I am recording it now, and I'm sure we'll stick it up on our YouTube channel or something to that effect. I'll let Savannah deal with the details. I don't see why the PowerPoint wouldn't be available. There's nothing secret about that. It's part of our spec sheets as well, which I believe are out in public or are going to be very near it, which are all available on our website. Otherwise, there's no real special sauce to the presentation. It's just the technical data broken up. What about the new UE firmware? Oh, look at that coming from Rick. All right, so a lot of people have been asking about that, so I'll talk in generalities. So there is a beta out there. Some of you are running it today, and I'm sure many of you are quite graphically pleased with the change. We have finally jumped from 1996 to 2017 on the web GUI, and it looks much, much better, and it's obviously much more functional. So that will be coming hopefully in the next couple weeks. There's some features in there that essentially needed to be worked out, as well as a couple bugs before it hit the really hit the gate, grounds running, particularly when it relates to the signal screen. So the biggest request we've had is the signal screen refresh. That's kind of been a problem. The installers having to wait for a long time. We have addressed that, essentially a live refresh. So that's coming soon. I'd expect it hopefully the next 2, maybe 2.5 weeks, but don't hold me to it. All right. What kind of rain? Okay. is the fiber in the new EMB simplex or duplex? Well, that depends on what SFP cage or SFP you use. The one that we send with it is duplex, is LC duplex. What kind of range could we expect from the low power radio with indoor CPEs? Woof, that's a big question. Well, like most times I've probably asked me a coverage question, and this is not to sound rude, but anywhere from 100 feet to 1,000 meters. It's really going to depend on what you have for terrain, trees, etc. I would say confidently what I'm seeing, because we have tried this and tested in, I would say more like RV parks, trailer park kind of situations, where 2 or 3 base stations, mostly for capacity, completely cover the grounds without fail, all with indoor radios. So I would not be too concerned on the coverage in that regard. If you're trying to go 2 or 3 miles, we're all going to be disappointed. I'm assuming the new base station will work with other vendors CP that support CA. Yes, if they are standards compliant, and I'll use that good, and they follow the 3GPB standard, you can use whatever CP you would like. And same goes regardless of the category. So even if it doesn't support CA and it may be a Cat 3 or Cat 4 or Cat 4 Plus, they will certainly work just fine with our base station. We have nothing limited. As long as the SIM card's provision, pop it in and go. Will Baicells ever offer fiber-connected 1-watt E-nodes? Well, Bill, and I'll answer Josh your question in a second, but just because Bill brought up a good one, not to say that yours wasn't, I go live here. I want to kind of... Woohoo! Okay. So, Bill, this is the new Gen 1-watt. Much like those pictures you saw for the 436, much sleeker, slimmer. Ports on the bottom are cleaned up quite a bit. And to answer your question, there is an SFP gauge and copper. So that will be on the new gens. This one's not shipping quite yet, but once it does, you will have it. So be fiber fed right to the E-node. The new 1-watt is nice, Josh. It is a lot lighter. The mounting bracket's completely different. It's I wish I'd had the mounting bracket here quick to show you, but it's still packaged up somewhere. Grounding access is very slick and following a standard spreader. GPS still goes on the top here like the other ones, but the GPS is even smaller and easier to deal with. Otherwise, not much difference about it. As far as price, again, I'll defer to the team. I don't think it's going to be very different much at all, honestly. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. I think it's slightly increased just because some of the added features, but we're not talking like thousands. We're probably talking a couple $100 would be my guess. All right, so Josh, your question is UE resource utilization. Not really. There's not really a way to limit that. We can put in certain triggers, and I'll kind of explain those in some future webinars of how to, if you see a certain error rate more so than a utilization, that it's going to look for something else. Trying to design it to essentially prevent a connection. I honestly don't know if it can be done. I'll have to look at it. I'll talk with the R&D team and see if it's something we can build into a future software stack and pull that off. But it's a good request. So I'm not saying it's not a reasonable request. It's just whether or not it can be done. So I'll look into that. One other thing I wanted, someone's got a question. Same co-location capability on the 227 as the R9. Thinking about use on utility pole. What's the power consumption the new Gen 1-watt? All right, so 2 questions. All right. So, yes, similar co-location capability in the 227. It's got right now the spec sheet says it's got a 25 dBm front to back ratio. However, that's just the patch antenna. What we didn't record and what we're testing now is what's the front to back ratio when the antenna is in the shell. So we're testing that at the moment, and I'll have a better understanding of what kind of density we can do. But this is exactly what that's designed for. It's like utility pole applications. Say you have 2 of them, you want to shoot up and down the road to cover, a small area. perfect application for it. If you need higher power, then certainly look at like the Nova 436 with higher gain, higher transmit power, etc. Particularly the way some of the CBRS rule is shaping up with 47 dBm EIRP, we'll crank that power up a little bit more. I would look at that, but it also depends on your needs. But there's a number of people that are looking at this product specifically for these pico cell micro pop applications, especially where you can bring in cheap backhaul where it's applicable, but still be able to power off what a lot of you guys do today, like a Nettonics or any other type of PoE switch, which is very common in this market. We'll be able to power this base station, so it really can tightens things up from a deployment standpoint, not having to do all these big power supplies that our current 1 watts or CA products do today. And the second part of your question, what's the power consumption of the new Gen 1 watt? The spec sheet says 45 watts. Well, if you saw the spec sheet on our current one, it says 55 watts, I think. And Josh Powell, I think, most recently posted, because he's running one off of Nettonics, I think he's at 35 watts on the first gen. The second gen I'm seeing in my lab running it's closer to running watts under cold temperature full load. I'm seeing it right around 29, 30 watts, pretty much right on the nose. But for the sake of everybody's sanity, please follow the spec sheets and plan any solar systems or anything else based on what the spec sheet says. Now, the 436 power consumption, that is going to be 60 watts. Max. Well, before the next question comes in, I want to take a moment here. For a lot of people that are have a lab and they're testing out their products, hooking up to antennas, that's okay if you're turning the power down and things like that. But I would encourage you, if you have a lab environment, and I'll post a link to these on our Facebook page. If you are on there, great, you'd see that. These are called dummy loads. Take a good look at it. This one's actually good for 10 watts TX power. But they make some for 1 watt, and I would encourage you to get your hands on some. These ones are a little bit more expensive. 10 watt ones, these are about $60 a piece, but the 1 watt ones are like $5 a piece. So what they essentially do is simulate a connected antenna. You'd still have some short range connection capabilities, even running full power. This thing will essentially dissipate that RF energy without having an antenna hooked up. So you don't have to have an antenna hooked up in a lab environment, but it's a very good tool to have. It cleans things up. It acts like it simulates it's actually an antenna load, and good for a lab kind of environment where you just want to do some UE testing, make sure there's a connection. You're 5 feet away and it's all on the bench. Great little devices to have without having to spit out a ton of RF, particularly if you guys are running in the lab with no antenna at all. That's bad. Don't do that. Please get some of these, or at least stick an antenna on it at a very minimum. Paul, the solar solution, we made some design changes from the one that you guys saw at Wispalooza, and a lot of those design changes came kind of on the fly. And what we are doing is changing it to not be just a solar system, but overall E-node B UPS. That will take an AC input as well. So the current product only took DC in from the solar and had DC out by PoE or straight DC feed. So we power both our 227 or the new Gen 1 watt. So what we are changing is adding the AC input with a variable electrical range, say 96 to 225 or something like that. And we're doing that because we want that product to be appealing to not just Baicells. We realize that particular product has an opportunity to scale to many vendors' base stations, because there's no pole-mounted, at least in a small cell sense, that's easy battery backup for the small cell. There's usually a big cabinet involved, and we're trying to simplify that, as well as we're adding network management components to it, so you actually be able to see if the power switched on and off, and be able to alert the OMC, things like that. So that is going to be a webinar for a future day. once we get all the technical information wrapped around and the new hardware design. Because if you guys saw the first hardware design, it had those same Amphenol connectors on the bottom, which we all love to hate, and we're putting in favor of a side door. So that was like one of the things. Let's get that side door back involved. That was a great design. Let's stick with it. So that's hey, sit tight for solar. Sit tight for an announcement on that. Once we have all the details, I'll be doing a webinar specifically to talk about solar and its applications. For running the 436 in split mode, is there a way to turn up or down the power per carrier so the EEV could be mounted on a single sector with coax running to a second antenna? Yes, if it's running in split mode, you can turn the power up and down independently. If it's running in CA mode, no. And Jeremy makes a good point too. If you have a good attenuator, perfectly fine as well with the power turned down. So, and then basically to each their own, whatever is convenient for you and your budget to acquire. What category is the UE? The new Gen UE, we have two flavors. So you're going to see two versions at the market. There's going to be a Cat 4, which is basically a repackaged version of the 19 we have now. And there'll be a Cat 6 shortly there behind it. And for those of you guys who want something that's officially on the roadmap, we'll have Cat 12 hopefully in the next 6 months. All right. Any other questions, guys and girls? So which bands do the 430 and 436? So the 430 has been tabled. That product has been kind of shelved for now. We're just focusing on the 436, which is the higher power one. And what we're having is it's 42, 43, and once the rules get placed in, it's a software update to support band 48. EPC added to that, and support for network sync. So we do support 1588 V2. You just need to have a 1588 V2 server running on your network for it to phone home to. I know that's specific to your application, Jeremy. So, OTA sync, good question. I will have to get a clarification on that, and I will email you a follow-up on the OTA sync. Something I've been asking about for a couple of days now, or a couple of weeks. EPC. Oh, of course it would. Band 41 is awesome. All right. So EPC question. So that is that's a great question. It always is. So we're testing, and there's a couple people on this call that are testing out what we call Halo B. Now, if you were in our training class at Wispalooza, you heard all about Halo B, which essentially is a combination of local EPC and cloud EPC having a marriage. And what happens with the Halo B is there is a connection to the cloud, and that's still the HSS. All the SIM provisioning still happens in the cloud and all that. But what you will see is once the Halo B gets an attach request, if it's already been attached, it doesn't go to the cloud at all. If it has never been attached and it doesn't recognize that SIM card, it goes to the HSS up in the cloud, downloads that information to its local database, and retains it. So if you ever lose the cloud connection, as long as the base station at one point or another has seen that IMSI try to attach, it'll just do all its authentication locally. But if it hasn't, that's when it will go to the cloud. So it's kind of a combination of the best of a local while still maintaining the cloud redundancy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that event that we had. So we will have full-blown cloud redundancy by the end of year. So that includes the HSS, MME, etc. So we don't have that issue we had a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Nobody wants that. The local EPC, so that is coming. So it was supposed to actually have a commercial availability to us here in North America today. It's finishing up its testing. We're going to package it up, and it will be soon available as a product. And certainly reach out to your channel and the sales team, and they will be best to provide you an update, because essentially they're going to get that update from me. and Jesse, and we will provide all the information around that to be able to purchase a local EPC. For those who are going to ask, pricing TBD. It's not quite ready yet. So once we figure out all the details, you can expect a formal announcement from Patrick and the rest of the marketing team. Band 46 support on the, so we do have a LTEU product, and actually it's tested. It's in an area. However, I am not happy with the product. I don't think North America would be happy with the product. I would like to see it packaged up in the 436. Then I think we're on to something, Jeremy. So that's a good question. So if we can put that band 46 into the band 46 into the 436 platform, we may be onto something. I do not think we'll see it in the 1105. However, I am asking for a connectorized version because the initial product that we are launching and testing has it's all integrated antenna. It's very low gain, in my opinion, for what this band needs. And I just don't think it's a product I would be comfortable getting behind to sell you guys. So we've given that feedback to the R&D team. They'll take that back. However, one thing that even hit in my mind, Jeremy, and you just touched on that, is putting it in a 436 case. That I think has some legs. So I would we'll look at that. ETA and 2.5 go to release 12. That's it, next quarter. So look for first quarter of 2018, and hopefully we'll see some magic happen there, as well as some very cool announcements I'm going to share at an upcoming webinar about some of the other neat things that we're doing with our software and our stack in general, and how we're going to be able to achieve, the big dirty word that everybody sees is kind of gigabit LTE, and there's a lot of tech that goes behind that to make that a real, something that's a reality, not just a marketing phrase. So there is a difference between the two, and my practical experience as an operator certainly knows that, and being on the manufacturing side of it now, it's even I get what everybody wants. But I can tell you firsthand, it's not as easy as it sounds, and it's been an adjustment for me personally, because I'm always like, oh, it can't be that hard to develop. These guys are smart, get it done. Well, it's actually really hard to develop, especially when we're designing the stack ourselves in many cases. With the cloud EPC, and I'll talk about the EPC a little bit more. So when the commercial EPC does come available, you will be able to support multiple APN. So that kind of answers Joshua's question, including private APN for management, et cetera, and so forth. Then you have the cloud EPC. We're actually going to be introducing multiple APN in the next release of cloud EPC as well. The only dilemma will be the base station will need to support the multiple APNs, and that will be a kind of a patch update that will come out after SBC 009. I understand 4x4 EMB will be coming by end of Q2, but doesn't. Okay, so no, the 436, though it does have 4 ports, is actually just two 2x2 radios. So it's not a 4x4, and it is not software selectable to be 4x4. So it's actually a separate product altogether. Yes, 2018. And a private APN, how would traffic, typically it's offloaded at the EPC level via VLAN. There's different ways to do it. That's what I've seen to be most common throughout the industry. That's exactly what Verizon does. I've seen AT&T and Sprint do the same. So what you'll see happen is if you have a private APN, say for a municipality, just for the sake of easy conversation, and you had all their fleet vehicles and all their street lamps and things like that, and they wanted private APN services, you'd be able to take all that traffic with a local EPC back to your data center and then hand off, whether it's right on site or some other connection mean, a private VLAN for them that would be associated with that APN. 256 QAM on the 1105 and 436. No, the chipset is not capable of 256 QAM. However, that is obviously something we're pushing for in the next hardware production, which you're going to hear a lot more about, and kind of what I understand that you talked with Mr. Soon, Jeremy, yesterday, and you're going to see some pretty cool advancements when it comes to 256 QAM. All right, Josh is getting me laughing. Yes, I'm in. This is my calm closet. It's literally a closet. All right, any other questions, guys? It's been essentially a couple people asking questions. I'll just see if there's anybody else that wants to jump into the mix. Has anything else? I'll kind of open as a free-for-all. It doesn't have to be about a particular product. It can be, a question that maybe should be good to answer for everybody to know. I'll try to address them as best as I can. Even I do not have all the knowledge of LTE. I like to say I have maybe 20% of it, and that's enough for my brain to consume at one moment. The closet actually does. I actually had this closet done. It's all aluminum faced insulation in this entire room. Makes Wi-Fi signals a bit of a challenge. All right, what about the PoE Wi-Fi routers that were show at Whisper Macro? Okay, so Terry asked a good question. So the PoE Wi-Fi router is kind of, I like the concept of it, and I always have, and I don't want to kill it, but it wasn't actually a PoE Wi-Fi router. We were looking at making one. So for those who recognize or have used our indoor CPE, there is talks, there's been, and probably some continued talks to make the indoor CPE, lose the LTE card in it, and just have a PoE out option on it, so we can power our radio, monitor it from OMC, change Wi-Fi patterns, all that, and we still may go down that road. The challenge is how many legs do we think that'll actually grow in this market? Because really, and at the end of the day, it's the WISP market that's going to want that. And the reason I say that is and not to promote another product, but there's a number of products out there that actually power these devices already. Some of you have tested it. I actually have one behind me that I've tested because I want to do an interop. I'll pull it up, even though I'll probably get smacked at later. So that's the new Ubiquity Air Cube. Some of you guys have got it. Snuck this one off the beta store. But this one does 24 volt PoE out, and it actually powers all of our outdoor UE. So because of the likes of companies like Ubiquity, it's going to be hard to make a product, at least in our mind, that's going to be as cost competitive that you guys want to use versus just buying something that, as much as I hate to say it, you all know and love or hate. But, them already being in the market and it's a product that works with ours, that makes it challenging, as you can probably imagine from our perspective, to say, hey, we're going to go out and make 10,000 of these things and cross our fingers and hope they sell. On the Atom R9, is there a PoE power range or just 12 volt? And I never remember this. Rick's on here, though, and he usually does. On the Band 41, I think it's just 12 volt, but he might correct me, but I think it's 9 volts to like 28 volts. Yeah, Band 41 is only 12 volts, and that's all changing anyway. But all the new ones, I believe it's 9 volts to 28 volts. So it's got a pretty big swath on it as far as voltage regulation. Yeah, perfect. So 9 to 28 on the G's. Roadmap for 256 QAM. We are pushing for second quarter of next year, but it may be closer to third quarter. But I want it done by, at a very minimum, Wispalooza next year, so we all can celebrate and catch whatever disease is flowing around the Rio. All right, and Band 43 Atoms 11. Yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, all of the Band 43 products, they have 9 to 28 volt range. So that should answer that. All right, any other questions, anybody? We'll run. I don't mind running past. I have nothing else until about 3:30. So if you have more questions, it's a good time to get them out. I like Josh's idea, including some sort of battery backup and a PoE out product. That would be handy. Take that under advisement. What about LT as a backhaul to feed the 227? It's doable. It's not. I would say you can do it. I do have inlet. I hate to fumble on my words here, but unless you have a better layer 2 option, I prefer that you don't. I just think it might be a bit of a support issue for you. If you have, if you're doing EOIP right now on the cloud and you're able to deliver some network routing, some decent network routing to the 227, then you might be in better shape. But trying to do it, say if you're just going to go from a subscriber right into a base station, for example, for Ethernet, it might be a little bit more convoluted. On a local EPC, you get a lot more flexibility because you can control the variables, you control the IP systems, you can do that a little bit differently. But it is doable. It's kind of the whole concept. You guys have probably seen the Magic Box, whatever Sprint's calling it. That's essentially what it is. It's exception. It's one device that does that very thing, whereas ours would be two. You'd have a CPE plus the retransmit. The biggest thing I'd say about the 227 using LT as a backhaul is just plan for capacity. I've seen a number of instances, as an operator helping out other operators where you're using a sector antenna that already has 20, 30 customers on it, and that same sector antenna is providing backhaul to a micropop, and you got another 20 people putting shit on that micropop, and everybody's kind of wondering what's going on and why is it slow. Well, plan capacity accordingly, and you'll probably be in good shape. But if you try to push the limits, you kind of get what you invest into your network at that point. OTA sync from band 3 to band 4. Where is this received on the MBS? I'm going to be using the GPS port. Yes, it should be on the GPS port. So I'm told. I cannot verify that for certain, but that is what I'm told. What is the max uplink QAM of the current band 4110? 16. 16 QAM. 64 QAM on the downlink, 16 QAM on the uplink. No, anytime. Okay. Well, it seems like questions are starting to kind of dwindle down. If you want to throw a couple more in, I'll close by saying thank you for guys joining. I'm hoping to do these more regularly. I certainly will be doing them for the individual distributors and kind of on their private. So certainly check out your distribution channels. I'll be joining them on many occasions. We got some coming up, I think, in the next 2 weeks to support them and answer any other stuff coming on there. Yeah, hopefully, Richard. I'll be busy down there. We'll see what comes of it. So good stuff going on, but pay attention to our Facebook page. Certainly watch out for our marketing material. If you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter. Get that, and we're going to send it out bi-weekly, and definitely some puns on the name. It's called the BAI Weekly. But do sign up for it. It's going to be a lot of decent information in there, kind of what we're up to. I do my best to get some technical stuff in there. There isn't always stuff, but there is usually a little nugget of information that Savannah tries to pry out of me, even though I do try to keep it kind of tight to the chest until I know it's ready for you guys. So be on the lookout for sure. The next week or so, you will see the B110 software release to GA. Just a matter. I'm hoping for Monday. Everybody cross your fingers for it if you want to play with it. If it does not come Monday, it's not coming until next Monday. I can promise that much. So So sit tight, be ready for it. In the meantime, if you have any support requests, I do ask everybody continue to do what you've been doing. It's been great since I've kind of made that public service announcement on Facebook. Now that I've taken over the support role, is please use the ticketing system as much as you can. It helps us identify trends as quickly as possible. That doesn't mean don't post anything on Facebook. That just means I can track it and I'm likely to respond. And me replying to you on Facebook, certainly don't look at it as a jab, but kind of look at it as a jab and say, hey, what's your ticket number for me to look at? That's my way of saying, hey, did you submit a ticket? So please do submit a ticket. It helps me determine what I need for support resources. If we're starting to get overwhelmed or need to hire more people. So you helping me is going to be able to help us help you. So you do that little thing for us, we're all going to have a very good relationship to ensure the maximum response time possible for your particular issues that we have to address. So I do thank you all again for joining. Be on the lookout for additional webinars, and we will we'll certainly be in touch. And I look forward to working with you all individually. Have a great day.